1.
Good evening, everyone. This is Mayor Cyril Jefferson calling to order our regular meeting for the High Point City Council. With me here in chambers are all members of council who are present, as well as Madam Manager, Madam Attorney, Madam Clerk, and a number of city staff. Before we get into our full agenda for today, we're actually going to ask everyone to rise for a moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. Our agenda for this evening's meeting was noticed last week, and there are a number of items that have been placed on our consent agenda, as well as those that have been placed on our general agenda. Prior to adopting, we want to ask if there are any items that are in the consent that a member of council would like to have moved to general.
Mr. Mayor, I have two items.
Councilmember Harmon.
2024-050 and 2724-060.
Okay, so 2724-050 and then 2724-060.
Correct.
Okay. Those items are being moved to agenda. Are there any other items?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would also like to pull 2024-062.
Okay, 2024-062 being moved to general. Any other items?
I only have a comment. I don't have a problem with the consent agenda, but just for the record, and also a request of staff on item 2024-015, after passage.
051.
051, I'm sorry. After passage of this, at the implementation and approval of HUD, I know the history on this and that it was approved in part of our budget last year on a non-unanimous vote, but the ordinance didn't pass, so that's what we're addressing. I would just request, once that this is approved and the work continues, that you please mark the calendars, come back to the council in a year to review the effectiveness of the passage.
Any questions from staff on that, from council? Okay. So our agenda as it stands right now is we've got our full list of consent with these items being moved to general 2024-050, 2024-060, and 2024-062. Any questions about the items that have been moved to general? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Holmes, second made by Councilmember Moore. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against? The ayes have it, and we have our agenda for this evening. Our first motion here is to accept our consent agenda items, except for those three that were pulled over to general. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Councilmember Peters, second made by Councilmember Johnson. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it, and that motion passes. First item for discussion in our general business agenda, we'll go ahead and handle item 2024-050 that was pulled from consent. Consideration of a sole source contract to Precision Safe Sidewalks LLC. This was heard in our Finance Committee meeting last week, and I believe speaking on it, we have our Public Services Director, Robbie Stone. Robbie, I'll pass it to you. If you'd give us a brief update on what that is, and then we can have some discussion here on the
Yes, sir.
dais.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is for our Precision Safe Sidewalks to replace some sidewalk trip hazards that are within the area. Multiple locations within the Central Business District were identified as trip hazards. Back in January of 2021, we conducted a study, and over 3,000 hazards were identified. This is the third phase of this project. Phase one identified and eliminated over 1,800 trip hazards. Last year, we did another 931, and this phase will finalize those trip hazards within the Central Business District, which is another 1,300 trip hazards within the area. Precision Safe Sidewalks possesses a patented technology to perform this work. This technology is less intrusive than digging up the sidewalk and replacing it, while being much faster and less expensive. We do have funding currently available for this, and Public Services recommending approval of this sole source repair to Precision Safe Sidewalks in the amount of $131,318.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this?
I was glad to see this. I'm new to council, still learning, because mobility was talked a lot about in the campaign, and so I'm glad to see the city's been proactive on this. I was just curious about Exhibit C, the unrepairable hazards that were identified. So does city staff do that extensive repair, or is that also contracted out?
These repairs are contracted out through this Precision Safe Sidewalk.
Right, but I guess they noted some that were beyond what they do.
Okay, yes,
in Exhibit
some that
C.
were beyond their repairs, yes, that would be city staff, or we may contract that out through another contract.
Okay. Does this fit in with the sidewalk plan that was done a few years ago to do some of this remediation and then figure out where additional sidewalks need to be and that sort of thing?
So this is not really looking at where additional sidewalks should be. It's really focused on our current and existing sidewalk and looking at maintaining that and making sure that that area is safe for the meeting ADA standards.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? If not, then we'll entertain a motion to approve 2024-050. Second. Motion made by Councilmember Moore, seconded by Councilmember Johnson. Any discussion on this item? I'll echo the comments made by Councilmember Harmon about how awesome this is to improve mobility. Also, that you all found a cost-efficient way to do it, I think is also
Thank you.
pretty fantastic. If there's no other questions or discussion on the item, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it, and that motion passes. Next item for discussion is 2024-060. This is consideration of a task order with CPL Inc., Architecture, Engineering, and Planning. This item was also heard in our Finance Committee last week, and here to speak with us, Parks and Rec Director, a rare appearance, Lee Tillery. How are you doing, Lee?
That's nice to hear. I'm doing well. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Manager, members of council. Good to see everyone. Lee Tillery, High Point Parks and Recreation Department. Before you is a task order for design services related to the new Center for Active Adults, or Senior Center, for the construction, the design services to go along with the construction of this building. We took this to Finance Committee on Thursday and covered a lot of this. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, I can talk a little bit about the background and the history surrounding this project. In November of 2019, this project, along with the Sea Lake Park renovation, was part of the 2019 general obligation bond referendum. That passed. We moved forward with the City of Lake Park project. Initially, at the time, there was some questions with COVID and pools and things of that nature, so we decided to move forward with that project. And as you guys know, that project was completed in January of 2023. Summer of 2021, the city sold the land where our previous senior center was located on North Hamilton Street to assist with the expansion of the Children's Museum. So we sold this particular property and the building that was on the property to High Point University, and in turn, they offered us a lease in Ocala Mall. So we essentially moved our senior center services to the mall, which is where we are right now at Ocala Mall, which has been great. We have plenty of space in there. We're in probably more space than we need right now, but it's been very convenient for us, and it all worked out with the sale of the land. Our building on North Hamilton Street was in disrepair, so this move obviously has been coming for a long time. In early 2023, myself, along with Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Duquesne, started looking at potential locations for a new senior center, where that would go, how we could move about making a decision knowing that we only had $12 million in the bond referendum. So the direction was to look at properties already owned by the city. So we moved forward in that direction, started evaluating various properties throughout the city, trying to look for a good central location that would serve this center. and really taking into account what that new senior center will look like, or the Center for Active Adults. What we're seeing and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, what we're seeing now, what we're seeing on the state national level here in High Point is a senior center that's a lot more active. Does it look like a center of yesterday? More focus on healthy living, active lifestyles. So we wanted to be cognizant of that as we looked at a new location. We recommended a location to City Council at a manager's briefing in April of 2023. And that property, that location is at 503 James Road, adjacent to the Oakview Recreation Center, where the city owns 17-plus acres of land. We then entered into after presenting that to City Council, we then entered into a pre-planning phase with HH Architecture in the fall of 2023. And during that phase, we did a number of things. Surveyed our public, met with stakeholders, met with people at the senior center, surveys online. So we got a lot of information, again, reflecting what we kind of already knew, but talked a little bit more about that focus on a healthy lifestyle, more active lifestyle, focused on programming and socialization. So we wanted to center that building around that. With the location at Oakview, we also looked at the possibilities with the recreation center. So if we had to scale back, say with some open space, we could be able to use a recreation center in the morning. It's not available for use all the time, but say in the morning if we needed to use it. We also have the opportunity with the topography and layout of the 17 acres at Oakview to insert trails, and maybe even look at pickleball courts, maybe outdoor exercise equipment, anything really to focus on a healthy living where we could take some stuff outside, have a more campus approach. If you're familiar with our recreation centers, all of them are really parks, and there's a recreation center in the middle. Senior center would be no different. So we did this in the fall of 2023, and we based that study on this location there at Oakview. So that kind of brings us to where we are today. We looked at who could help us out as far as the design. And this contract looks at all three phases of design: schematic design, construction documentation, and involving CPL with our construction administration. They presented a great price to us, and that contract is at $748,800. And again, that takes us through all phases of the design and construction administration. What they will do after schematic design is provide us two schematic plans. At that point, they'll also offer us a probable list of costs, so we'll know then. And our idea then is to move forward with a construction manager at risk, and we can start that process during schematic design as we send out RFQs to see who may be interested in helping us in the construction of that project.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for staff?
I have a couple. You knew that was going to happen, right? Thanks, Lee, for the recap. I guess some people may be wondering why the placement of the new Center for Active Adults, I am one, is kind of near, I guess, beside the community garden versus the backside, and that's because there's a creek on the backside, right? And you can't actually build on the backside.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Just for clarification, I guess in the selection of this company, what went into that and just into selecting this firm to go with versus somebody else?
Well, we have a number of these firms on our master call list with the city, and we have used a variety of them throughout at least my term here as Parks and Recreation Director on different projects. So when they're on that master list, they've already been vetted, so to speak, and we move forward with looking at now some firms that have done work in the area that have references. CPL has worked with senior centers in other areas as well. So we did get pricing from a couple of firms, and they were by far the lowest priced to be able to do that work. And again, they have a solid background and history of working with senior centers in the area as well.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion on this item? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve item 2024-060, consideration of a task order with CPL Incorporated. Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Holmes, seconded by Councilwoman McKeever. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it, and that motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item for discussion is item 2024-062, consideration of a resolution approving the donation of surplus fire equipment to Bethany Volunteer Fire Department. This was approved at last week's Finance Committee, and we'll actually ask if our Fire Chief, Tommy Reed, would come forward and tell us a little bit about this item.
So what you have before you is a recommendation for a donation to a volunteer fire department. So back when Deep River Fire Department ceased to exist, we contract with the county, so the county pays us a tax rate to ride that. So we're getting paid every year to provide fire protection to anyone in the Deep River Service District. But so with that, since it was a nonprofit, their assets go to the people that provide the protection for that community. So that's how we inherited those trucks, and they were fairly old when we got them anyway. And but we got funds. Actually, the boat at Fire Station Number 5 that we use every day was paid for with the funds from Deep River. They put a portion into building that fire station up there, so they had that community has a vested right in the city. So, but this truck was replaced. It was an old brush truck, mini pumper, and we replaced it through our normal progression that we do on the apparatus plan. And as with the pumper before that we got from them, we donated it to a volunteer fire department that needed it, kind of paying it forward a little bit. And so it really has not cost the city anything. It was just something that we inherited, as well as the money from that, from those funds and all that. And so we get paid on, so just trying to pay it forward and help somebody that's less fortunate to us, I see that as a worthy cause and kind of paying it forward to other people. So.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that, Chief. Any questions for Chief from council?
Yes, so I want to say, personally, I do agree. I like the idea of paying it forward. I did we had a constituent reach out with a few questions, so I did want to put the answers to his questions on the record. So the first question was, what is it worth at auction, and was the scrap value of the asset? Because I guess you can see how if we own it, we could potentially make money off of it.
So that truck, I'm going to say, on scrap value, may bring a couple of $1,000s. A truck that we pay $700,000 for in 15 years, when we go to auction with it, we may get $4,000 or $5,000. So there's not much value in it other than the scrap value. But it's kind of, the best value, I think the best thing that we can do, to me, is give it to somebody that can use it. And I mean, we could sold it for $1, $100, or whatever you want to call it, but it's really, I mean, we are, like I said, there's people out there that struggle every day to survive in communities that are less fortunate than us. So I just think that it's a nice gesture to be able to help them.
I agree, thank you. I think you kind of already answered the second question. I think you've kind of answered it, but I can see how, I listened to the Finance Committee meeting. These questions weren't asked, so I wanted to make sure that we just went into a little bit of the financial details around why we would not want to dispose of it in another way. And I really appreciate your network to be able to identify a source that would benefit from the truck that we're not using.
And it wasn't asked at finance, but not often, but there are occasions where surplus materials from our city are donated, if you want to give it that word, in these similar formats, but it's not often.
I just said that to say that I did listen to the committee meeting, and I'm not replicating any discussion that was already had under your leadership, Rick. Thank you.
Just adding to.
Any further questions or discussion from council on this item?
I mean, I would like to know, this is a charitable organization. The Volunteer Fire Department is a charitable organization, just to note that as well.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm just saying, the Volunteer Fire Department is a charitable organization. I just was
Oh, yes, sir.
making a note
It's
of
a
that.
nonprofit, and basically, it's actually a fire department that raises money the old-fashioned way with stews and
Yeah,
hot dogs.
Brunswick stews and all that sort of stuff, yeah.
And services Guilford County, which we are a part of, so, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Peters, second by Councilmember Johnson. Any more discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it, and that motion passes. Thank you so much, Chief. The next item on our agenda for consideration is to introduce a series of 2024 general obligation streets and sidewalk bonds. At this time, I will introduce a resolution of the City Council of the City of High Point, North Carolina, making certain statements of fact concerning proposed bond issue and calling a public hearing, and I introduce that in the form of a motion. Is there a second? Second. Second made by Mayor Pro Tem Holmes. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? That motion passes.
And I'm also here to answer any questions you might have. I don't know if you want me to just kind of explain it a little bit before we do the second one.
Well, we got this. If council members want him to explain it, then you can.
Yeah, I think for public education, it'd be great.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Jefferson, members of the City Council. As the mayor just discussed, the items tonight will introduce the 2024 general obligation street and sidewalk bond. This will be the first of several actions that we'll ask you all to take over the next 3 meetings. Last Monday, or I guess 2 Mondays ago, you all approved the Salmon Drive Extension Project. These bonds will be used to fund that project. And it's part of our long-term financing strategy to issue these bonds alongside of the referendum bonds that will come in later years. This is a smaller issue, so we're actually going to go the bank route instead of doing the public market. That saves us some money on cost of issuance, makes things a lot less complicated. Still goes through the same LGC review process. There is currently an RFP that has been circulated for that bank loan, and we will ask you all to award that at a later council meeting. But tonight, as the mayor just went through, we'll ask you to introduce a resolution making certain statements of facts, which you all did, and set the public hearing. And then the next action will be to actually introduce the bond order. So it's a little odd that you're voting on it, but you're really just voting to introduce the bond order so that you can have the public hearing on that, and then we'll ask you to adopt the bond order at a meeting next month. So does anybody have any questions for me on that, or otherwise the mayor's?
I do.
Okay.
So this is for the Samet Drive extension, but it seems like there's some language in there that is more general. Is that because there might be some money left over and that money can be reallocated to sidewalk somewhere else? Is that why the language is that way?
Yes, so bond orders are generally written with that kind of broad language in case something else would occur. It has to be used on street and sidewalk projects. Right. It will be limited to that, and staff fully intends to apply that to the Samet Drive project. But say we issue the bonds and you all decide to cancel that contract, we'd still have to utilize it on street and sidewalk projects.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But it's very standard language.
Any other questions for Mr. Fitzjohn? If not, then I'll go ahead and at this time introduce a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $5,425,000 general obligation streets and sidewalk bonds to the City of High Point, North Carolina. I make that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Councilmember Moore. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? That motion passes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Fitzjohn. Next item we have is a public hearing, 2024-046, on Double Play Properties LLC, annexation case 23-04. At this moment, I will go ahead and open the public hearing and acknowledge Mr. Shannon from staff to speak on this item.
Excuse me, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the City of High Point Planning Department. This is a request from Double Play Properties for a voluntary contiguous annexation of an approximately 0.3 acre parcel in the eastern central portion of the city. This is generally located in a residential neighborhood south of the intersection of East Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and South Scientific Street. The applicant is requesting annexation to have access to city utilities to develop a single-family home on this parcel. There's no zoning associated with this request. This property is in the extraterritorial areas, or what we call the ETJ. That's the area that Guilford County has granted to the City of High Point, granted zoning and building permit control. So there's no zoning associated with this request. This annexation petition represents a logical progression of the city's annexation policy, as this site is generally surrounded by this High Point city limits, and city service vehicles are already present in this area. Thus, staff is recommending approval of this request. Are there any questions?
Any questions for staff?
I have some.
Go ahead, Councilmember Harmon.
I guess the first thing, I drove out there the other day. Does there need to be a sign about this annexation? Because I didn't see a sign. I guess, doesn't need to be one?
A public hearing sign is not required for annexation. There was a legal ad that was recorded in the High Point Enterprise.
Okay. So is this street, is it in, the rest of the street, is it in the city limits and this house wasn't, this lot was not? Or is the rest of the street also not in the city limits?
The rest of the city is also not the city limit. If you look at the slide that's before you, the area that's highlighted in white are lands that are already within the High Point city limits. Those areas are gray or unincorporated areas.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, thank you. I think it's a question for one of the city managers. I mean, as far as the coordination of, when somebody calls 911 and EMS, and, you know, this person is going to be in the city, and the rest of Pinecroft is not in the city, I mean, I'm assuming that's all worked out in terms of who needs to show up?
The property would be added to our addressing system, so we would have the appropriate response.
Okay, all right.
And is it possible, just following on that question, in some areas like this where you've got county property that is surrounded by city property, we may have an agreement with the county for us to cover some of those emergency services?
It may be, yes.
It may be, yeah.
Okay, just, I don't want somebody not to be serviced because everybody's confused about if they're in the city or not. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for staff, from council? This is a public hearing, and we have a few folks who are signed up to speak for this public hearing item. I do want to note before we call a first person for it, that this, speaking on this public hearing has to be in particular to this agenda item. Our next public comment period will actually be in the first meeting in March. And so anyone who we call forth to speak, we ask that you speak for 3 minutes on this public hearing item. First person we have signed up to speak is Ken Orms.
Mayor, it's anyone, the applicant first usually speaks, if anyone's here to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Okay. Is there anyone here with the applicant who would like to come forward and speak to council? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Orms, if I heard you correctly, you said you want to speak on a different item?
Yeah, something that the board, that the council already approved.
Okay, understood. Understood. Thank you so much. All right, next person, and I'm struggling a little bit to read what's on this list. I'm gonna do my best, so please forgive me. Is it Kim? That's what I got. Is it Kim? Is there a Kim who wants to speak on this item? I'll try Jim. Was there anyone who wanted to speak on this public hearing item? All right, seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and make a motion to approve this item. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? That motion passes. Our next item for discussion is 2024-063, consideration of the reappointment of Julian Weathers to the Guilford County and High Point City Insurance Advisory Committee. I don't believe there is a staff member who's going to speak on this item, but if there's any discussion from council, feel free to share it. If not, I'll go ahead and make the motion for the reappointment of Julian Weathers to this committee. Is there a second? Second. Second made by Mayor Pro Tem Holmes. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? That motion passes. The next motion is consideration of revisions to our boards and commissions liaison members list. This is actually a revision that would place, that would ensure myself, Mayor Pro Tem Holmes, and Councilmember Amanda Cook will serve on the Guilford County Homelessness Task Force. I make a motion to approve these revisions. Is there a second?
Thank you.
Second made by Councilmember McKeever. I think that's what I heard. Any discussion on this motion? I'll say just a quick note on this, that one, we appreciate Councilmember Cook being willing to serve, but also want to celebrate Councilmember Peters, who served as a tri-chair for this task force for really the first year and a half of its inception. So Monica, thank you so much for your service on this task force. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any against? That motion passes. All right, we have come to the end of our meeting. Are there any announcements from council? Any questions, anything anyone want to share with the public before we adjourn? There is a game tonight. High Point University and Carolina Core FC are playing each other right now at High Point University. The game started 4 minutes ago. It is a free game, so you can pull up on campus and go right to their stadium. High Point University is playing Carolina Core FC in a soccer game. It was 55 degrees earlier. I don't know what it is right now, but hopefully it still feels good. If you want to join, you can join. Any other announcements?
Well, tomorrow at Compton Yards at 5:30, we're unveiling the Comprehensive Plan 2045. So please come out and check it out.
Yep, 2045 comprehensive plan for the city. It's a really big deal to see how we grow as a city over the next couple of decades. If you could join us at Compton Yards tomorrow at 5:30, please do. I know that Sushil is really looking forward to a big crowd. Any other announcements?
Well, early voting started, so we encourage everyone to participate in the process, and ends on March 3rd with the primary on March 5th.
Yeah. You didn't vote early, did you?
I voted
That's
today.
not what that sticker is.
It's Paresh's birthday today, so we went and voted together.
Nice. Point of privilege. Happy birthday, Presh. I'll also take another point of privilege. I know there are a number of folks who showed up today for the fair housing ordinance. It was actually approved in our consent agenda. And so I know there are a number of people who came in support of that. We want to thank you all for being here. I noticed President Elma Harrison of the High Point NAACP, who was a partner with the work we did for the One High Point Commission. I also see a number of folks with the High Point Realtors Association who are here with us, and we appreciate you all and your support of that.
Yes.
Any further questions, concerns? All right. If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Holmes, second made by Councilmember Johnson. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any against? That motion passes.